Hello, I'm Peter Okocha. Welcome to Focus on Africa, our top stories. A stark warning from Zimbabwe's president to opposition protesters alleging corruption within his government.
The bad apples that have attempted to divide our people and to weaken our systems will be flushed out.
The Zimbabwean Lives Matter campaign gains momentum on social media condemning the crackdown on protesters. Also on the program, can you believe this guy? How Togo's first Olympic medalist paddled the rapids of success. And British Vogue prepares to launch its special September issue created by a predominantly black cast and crew. Photographer Misson Harriman gives us the view through his lens. Thanks for joining us here on Focus on Africa from BBC World News. We start the program today with a developing story on BBC World News. A large explosion has hit the Lebanese capital Beirut. Reports say the explosion was in the ports area of the city with unconfirmed reports of a second blast. This is live footage coming from the city. There's a large cloud of black smoke and extensive damage to buildings and vehicles. And there are also reports that 10 people have been killed. A BBC reporter says he heard the blast from 10 kilometers away. It's not yet known what caused the blast, but we'll keep you updated throughout the program. Zimbabwe's president, Emmerson Mnangagwa, has given a stark warning to anti-government protesters. In a televised address on Tuesday, the president condemned what he called the machinations of destructive terrorist opposition groupings and vowed, in his words, that the bad apples would be flushed out. Opposition supporters and activists had last week called for protest against alleged government corruption, but security agencies ordered people to stay indoors. In his speech, President Mnangagwa took no responsibility for the economic problems, instead blaming them on divisive opposition, Western sanctions, and foreign economic aggression.
Those who promote hate and disharmony will never win. The bad apples that have attempted to divide our people and to weaken our systems will be flushed out. Good shall triumph over evil. The protection of the right to life is paramount, especially in light of the COVID-19 pandemic and the machinations by destructive terrorist opposition groupings.
Meanwhile, the hashtag Zimbabwean Lives Matter is trending across the continent and beyond in support of the protesters, with several high-profile figures expressing their solidarity. They include the former Liberian President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, who has encouraged protesters in their pursuit of freedom, and South Africa's Economic Freedom Front leader Julius Malema. He has also extended his solidarity. Now, Ghana goes to the polls in December and voter registration has begun. But there's furore over the process. Ghana's Supreme Court ruled that a birth certificate will not be accepted as a form of identification, and there are fears that many could be disenfranchised. Thomas Nadi reports from Accra.
Ghana's Electoral Commission is compiling a new voter register ahead of the December polls, as they say the existing one contains inaccuracies such as false names. But due to a new law on how to register, voters without a national ID card or passport won't be able to participate unless they can find two people who are registered to vote to act as guarantors. The opposition NDC party has challenged the decision, but the Supreme Court ruled that these new rules are necessary. But not all Ghanaians have a national ID card or passport.
The requirements this time around it's difficult to meet, so it makes it difficult for me to register. They said right now I have to have either a Ghana card or passport, and I don't have any of the two, so it's making it difficult. And also, I went to the center and they were telling me I would have to get someone to guarantee, in fact, 2 people. And getting a guarantor this time around is not something you find easily.
The opposition is worried many will be disenfranchised. It's less than 5 months to elections. The voter turnout in 2016 elections was 68%, and there are concerns it could be lower this year.
The birth certificate has always been a formal form of identification, a document that you actually use to get certain things like a passport and all of that. And if people don't have a passport and they don't have an ECOWAS card, on what basis are they going to apply for that? It almost looks as though we have the double standards with regards to what a birth certificate is suitable for and not suitable for.
The Electoral Commission said they have already registered over 15 million voters. Almost 60% of them used the national ID card for registration, while just under 40% used guarantors. The government said that so far the new system is working.
A very significant majority have done so with their passports and their national ID cards. And then the minority that have had to register with the guarantor forms have not been stopped from so doing. So it's difficult to argue that the Supreme Court ruling has disenfranchised anybody.
This is not the only issue being raised. There's also a public health problem. COVID-19 cases are on the rise in Ghana, and the big question being asked is whether it is okay to be registering voters at a time of a huge pandemic. Hand washing facilities are provided at each registration center, and temperatures are checked upon entry. People entering are also required to wear masks, but social distancing is difficult to maintain at some of the centers, and scanning machines are also not sanitized after each use. Some Ghanaians have decided not to register for fear of contracting COVID-19. The country has recorded over 31,000 cases.
Nobody's practicing social distancing. You see them talking to each other. Some even yell because sometimes they are not satisfied with certain things. And you see all these things and you feel you can't risk it. I think it's dangerous.
The opposition has filed a fresh application to challenge the decision of the Supreme Court, and until the court reviews its decision, voters like Ni Amu are unlikely to vote in this year's elections. Thomas Nadi, BBC News, Accra.
Now, let's go back to developments in Zimbabwe and that speech today by President Ernest Mnangagwa. Let's talk to Brian Kagoro, who is a constitutional lawyer and Pan-Africanist. He joins us from Johannesburg. Brian, we seem to be at an impasse in Zimbabwe. Is there any way forward?
Well, there's always a way forward, but there has to be willingness, political and otherwise. And if it doesn't exist normally, it has to be forced or encouraged by the neighbors.
Well, President Mnangagwa has talked about dark forces within the opposition and flushing out the bad apples. Does that kind of language bother you?
Well, it does, but it is, if you remember, on the 24th of November, Mnangagwa, in 2017, Mnangagwa gave an inaugural speech in which he said that the challenges in Zimbabwe are in part from the manner in which Zimbabwe has managed its politics nationally and internationally. And then, of course, at that time, he was calling for mutual tolerance, for peace and unity. What we are seeing now is Mnangagwa who is undoing the last 3 years or 2 years, but also Mnangagwa who's hell-bent on using the same language and using the same tactics that his predecessor used, which is silence any dissent and criminalize, if you can, any opponents, as well as once you've done that, you can liquidate them, use any force and violence against them because you have criminalized them, call them terrorists. And this is unfortunate for a country that began promising a bit of hope and with a lot of international goodwill.
And indeed, today we've seen the hashtag Zimbabwean Lives Matter go viral, at least on the African continent. How much pressure can African bodies, I'm talking about the African Union, the regional body SADC, put on the Zimbabwean government to try and sit down and dialogue with this opposition?
Well, you know, the AU shared values framework and the principle of non-indifference, as opposed to the old OAU principle of non-interference, and allows the AU, at least, to send certain diplomatic messages to Zimbabwe and ensure that Zimbabwe complies at least with those norms and standards, including the African Charter on Democracy, Elections and Governance, which was violated by the efforts of the government to stop even peaceful protests. So, however, AU has to defer to SADC, and SADC is unlikely to act, given its history of non-interference and also indifference to the Zimbabwean situation.
Brian, I'm afraid we'll have to leave it there, but thank you very much for your insight into a very important story here on Focus on Africa. Thank you. Let's take a quick look now at other stories making the headlines across Africa and the rest of the world. As you heard at the top of the program, there's been a loud explosion in Lebanon's capital, Beirut. There are reports of at least 10 deaths and hundreds of injuries. Videos from the scene in the port area show smoke billowing from an initial blast, then a much bigger explosion that appeared to engulf several nearby buildings. The cause of the blast is not yet known. Tanzania's opposition figure Tundu Lissu has been nominated to run for the presidency in October's general elections by the Chadema party. He got 405 votes out of 442 cast by members of the party's National Council. Mr. Lissu, who fled the country after narrowly surviving an assassination attempt in the capital Dodoma in September 2017, will now challenge incumbent President John Magufuli. The Algerian government is looking into the gradual reopening of mosques to the public. The first phase of the program will focus on large mosques that have a capacity of 1,000 people. Then there will also be a gradual reopening of beaches and other places of recreation and relaxation. Mosques, beaches and parks were closed in March to prevent the spread of coronavirus. This is Focus on Africa from BBC World News with me, Peter Okwoche. Still to come, the issue of the year. Vogue prepares to release its September edition created by a predominantly black cast and crew. I'm Peter Okwoche. Welcome back. Our top stories. The president of Zimbabwe, Emerson Mnangagwa, has warned that he will flush out opponents of his government as the security forces continue to arrest activists. And the top story on BBC World News, a blast has rocked Beirut, the capital city of Lebanon. There are reports that 10 people have been killed. The cause of the explosion is not yet known. Now, we were hoping to be bringing you news from the Tokyo Olympics during this fortnight here on Focus in Africa, because this is when the Games should have been held if it weren't for the coronavirus pandemic. So instead, we're taking a look at some of of Africa's greatest achievements in Olympic history. In 2008 in Beijing, kayaker Benjamin Pukpeti won the first ever Olympic medal for Togo. BBC Sport Africa's Victoire Ayoum reports.
Benjamin Pukpeti. Parfois on m'appelle Kujo.
Sometimes people call me Kujo. Kujo is my Kabaye name, given to me by my father, and it means the gift.
L'athlète de haut niveau.
High-level athlete in kayak slalom.
Première médaille olympique que j'ai.
First Olympic medal for my dad's country, Togo.
C'est vrai qu'il m'arrive.
To be honest, sometimes I actually wonder if I really won an Olympic medal.
Yet still you did, Benjamin. It was the 12th of August 2008, a day that will forever be remembered in Togo sporting history. On that day, defying the greatest kayaking nations in the world, Benjamin Kujo Pukpeti offered an amazing gift to Togo by becoming its first ever Olympic medalist. Yet the competition started pretty badly for him.
After the first round of the qualifiers, my time was so bad. I was on my way to the exit and definitely not to the semi-finals. So I was in tears. I was like, that's it. 4 years of preparation and it's almost already finished for me now. I completely blew it. It felt horrible. I could see my brother in the stands, my mother in the stands, and then what happened next was that I erased an incredible second round. I did the best time of anyone in the second round. And at that moment, I really thought to myself, there is something big to do here.
The following day, during the semi-final and final, Bouk Petit took his chance, helped by some inspiration from his coach and maybe a world's famous Olympian.
Mon coach qui m'a laissé un mot.
I discovered in my thing a message that my coach had left on the wall, which is a sentence from Muhammad Ali which says, "Don't count the days, make the days count." This evening, tonight, I have to do everything to make this day specific. I looked at the finish board. It looked okay, but I was unsure I made it. I looked again at the finish board, and there, I could see it. I was there. I was third. I went wild. That was amazing. Soon after that, I was following the podium protocol, and then I could see my mum in the stands. But this time, unlike the day before I was thinking to myself, you all came here, and I blew it. But today, oh yeah, I made it. When I won that medal, the most important thing for me was to realise that I was competent to make it happen, to gain my father's recognition at that time, to get the people who came with me their recognition.
And the recognition of a whole country, Togo, as he managed to make a mark in his Olympic history.
What a great story, eh? Now, for the first time in its history, the cover of British Vogue, the influential fashion magazine, has been shot by a black male photographer with a predominantly black team on set. The magazine's editor said the September issue was a rallying cry for the future and includes 40 activists described as the faces of hope. We'll be speaking to photographer Missan Harriman in a moment, but first this report by Brenda Imanas.
If a picture paints 1,000 words, then this is the vision of hope for the future as seen by the editor of British Vogue. The prestigious September issue has been dedicated to activism and features a host of international authors and changemakers, led by footballer Marcus Rashford and model-turned-mental health campaigner Adwoa Aboah.
Because we've been in COVID and then we went into sort of really incredible time of change. These people, for me, reflect where we need to go, where we need to be, caring for other people, caring for each other, caring for the world.
It's so cute. In the past 3 years, Edward Enninful has stormed towards his vision of a more diverse publication. He showcased big names and aspiring talent, had Meghan Markle as a guest editor, and turned key workers into cover stars. This drive for change is a personal one. Only last month he expressed frustration at being racially profiled at Vogue's offices.
I'm a black man in this world. It's not the first time I've been, pigeonholed in that way. It won't be the last time I'll be profiled.
It was Missan Harriman's photographs of the Black Lives Matter movement that drew him to the attention of Vogue's editor.
What I felt I could do is capture a time capsule of a truly unique time in British civil rights history. And I didn't know what to expect. And when I went out there, I saw this wave of solidarity.
He became the first black man in the magazine's history to shoot a front cover, producing images with a resounding message.
If not now, when? We are here and we deserve to be here. And it shows hope, solidarity, and empathy.
Rennie Edo-Lodge earned her place in the publication as the best-selling author of Why I'm No Longer Talking to White People About Race. She has praised for Vogue's leadership, seeing it as activism at its best.
Leading, basically, leading, not following what you think the mass wants, but actually leading. Because I think, if more cultural leaders did that, they would be pleasantly surprised, Like I say, I don't think my book would have been picked up in 2012, but, in the last few months, it hit #1 on the book charts.
In a year marked by global challenges, Vogue claims to deliver a message of hope by celebrating the activists determined to make a difference. Brenda Imanas, BBC News.
Well, let's talk more to Missan Harriman, who you heard there in that report. He photographed the cover and all of the UK activists in British Vogue's September issue. Now, Ms. Ann, how did it feel being a part of this experience on this issue, which is all about activism and people who have played a part in it?
It felt like a huge responsibility to really carve out a statement piece that was orchestrated by Edward Enninful and also show the truth of the subjects, the amazing men and women that are selflessly campaigning to carve out a better future for all of us.
And what exactly were you trying to capture?
Honesty, dignity, determination, and a force for change.
And I know you are of Nigerian heritage, something that you were very proud of. Did that influence your work?
Well, absolutely. My mother, from drawing my first breath, has raised me to have a pride of where I come from, who I am. And I think having that in a system where racism can make you feel that you're lesser than others has stood very well for how I have conducted myself. And I want to give that to younger generations, to be proud of their culture, to be proud of their families and where they have come from. And if I can show that in imagery, showing young black men and women that are immensely happy to have their natural hair, to wear traditional clothes, to talk about their history and culture as much as the history and culture that is forced upon them in the schooling system that they're in, I think that is a very, very strong way to have a brighter future.
And Ms. Ann, I've been told that there's a different way to photograph white people and as against photographing black people. Could you explain that to me, please?
Photography is a relationship with light and the subject. And as a black photographer, I know my own skin and I know the tonality of black skin. So when I am shooting somebody that looks like me, I would say it's easier for me to expose the frame properly and make sure that I get the right tonality. I don't want to get too technical, but in layman terms, I know how to make black skin look good because of my own self-image. It can be difficult if you are not black and shooting black people to understand how best to light the tonality of our skin. I would also say this, that in my images, people ask why there is so much emotion in them. And I say, when I'm photographing somebody that looks like me, they know that in some way we have the same lived experience. And they give me a little bit more in that image. I strongly believe that.
Okay, Ms. Ann, we don't have much more time on the program, but if you could, I mean, Vogue and a few other publications have always been accused of being institutionally white. Do you sense a change in the industry now, or is this just a one-off?
I don't sense it. I think I'm showing it, and many people are seeing it. Under the helm of Edward Enninful, he has repeatedly made history, and he's only been there for 3 years. From having key workers, from having the first black woman, it's been a historic tenure in a short period of time.
Ms. Ann Harriman there, who photographed the cover of the upcoming September issue of British Vogue. Congratulations, and thank you for talking to us here on Focus on Africa. Thank you very much.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Well, don't forget you can get more on all our stories, including that explosion in Beirut, on our BBC News website and social media pages. And don't forget, you can also get in touch with me and some of the team. I'm on social media as @Okwoche. And we're just showing you those pictures, still those live pictures there coming from that massive explosion in Beirut. For now, that's it from me, Peter Okwoche, and the rest of the Focus on Africa team. Thanks for watching. See you again very soon. Goodbye.